So it's 6 o'clock. My name's Kevin Shuker, and I'd like to officially welcome you all here to the Yoga Raw Food Expo. It's the second year that Mark has been holding this event here in New York City, and it is New York's only raw food expo. So if you're a raw food enthusiast or you're just learning about it, this is the place in New York City to learn this information. Over this weekend, we've got some absolutely amazing speakers that are lined up, and if you're attending all 3 days, you're going to be in for a treat, because some of the greatest minds, thinkers, and progressive networkers as far as the raw food movement are going to be here this weekend. And tonight we have quite an astounding panel to kick off this evening. So I'm going to quickly run through here from my right to left. First here we have Brenda Cobb, and Brenda's quite an extraordinary woman. I'm sure she'll tell you a little bit about her story, but she had a very serious illness, and through changing her diet to raw food, managed to reverse that process, and hopefully she'll tell us a little bit about that as we develop in the evening. Next to Brenda, we have Victoras Kulvinskas. And Victoras is really the father of raw food here in America. Perhaps these days, Victoras, we could even call you perhaps the grandfather as we move ahead of...
You got me dated. I don't like that.
So we'll stick to...
I call him Big Daddy. Big Daddy.
Yeah,
Big
yeah.
Daddy.
The Big Daddy. Hello, Doug. How you doing? Right, man. How you doing? The Big Daddy of raw food. Victoras really brought raw food to the United States of America, and he's one of the most inspirational speakers, and he can talk on so many subjects. He could talk for the full 2 hours. We could all be quiet. We could all still learn something from Victoras. He's amazing. Next to Victoras, we have Debra Secunda. Debra Secunda works in a few different areas. First of all, she's a producer of DVDs on raw food, such topics as, of course, Victoras. She markets one of Victoras's DVDs. Gabriel Cousins is another big name. And these DVDs are available with Debra. She's also running one workshop here.
Two lectures this time.
2 lectures.
Sprout your own superfoods and
the 10 minutes.
Smoothies.
She does. She's a real expert on sprouting, so we'll be learning a little bit about sprouting and the benefits of sprouting this evening. And she also does like a 10-minute meals in a blender or something similar to that, right? Yeah, which is great. So you can go and pick up some very interesting information from her. Next to Debra, we have Chad Ashley Vandenberg. And he's one of the new pioneers in superfoods and superfood marketing, mostly through the internet. And he has some incredible products that are available to everybody. You can just purchase them these days, and he'll be telling us a little bit about that. Chad also had a life-changing experience, and I hope he'll talk about that a little bit, how he also had a catastrophic injury which was reversed through changing his diet. And finally, at the end, we have Karen Spirer, who's here at the Raw Food Expo talking about raw lacto-fermented foods. And I think she's got something there on the table in front of us, so we'll be able to see what that is and perhaps even taste a little bit afterwards, Karen?
Well,
possibly. Great. So she's got a great workshop, and we're looking forward to learning about those type of foods. And our tardy latecomer here, Doug. Doug is the proprietor of Organic Avenue, one of the most progressive raw food stores here in New York City, down on Ludlow Street. Is that correct? And you have two now. So it's expanding throughout New York. And Doug will give us some information, perhaps about how the entrepreneurial spirit is being brought forward in the raw food movement. So I guess little introduction. We're going to move forward and let them each tell their own little story. So first of all, sorry, Doug, you were sitting right next to me, but I'd like to start with Brenda, as you were a little late. Yeah, you're always cleaning up in the back there. So first of all, I'd like to, again, introduce Brenda Cobb, author of Living Food Lifestyle and founder of the Living Food Institute in Atlanta. And hopefully now, Brenda, you can give us some information how you came to raw foods and your inspiration for moving forward within this world.
Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. How are you tonight? It's great to have you with us. It's always exciting to be here in New York, and I'm so glad that Mark is producing the Yoga and Raw Food Expo. You know, 10 years ago, whenever I was diagnosed with breast and cervical cancer, and I told my friends and family that I was going to use raw food to heal, they all looked at me like I was a woman from outer space. She has lost it, lost it, lost it. You know, my doctors told me that if I did not do surgery, chemo, and radiation, that I would be dead in a year. But, you know, I just knew that that was not the right way for me to go, because my mom and all of my aunts on my mother's side had had breast, cervical, uterine, or ovarian cancer, and every one of them had a mastectomy, and they all had hysterectomies because that's what the doctor told them they needed to do. And then they did the chemotherapy and the radiation because that's what the doctor said they needed to do. But either their cancers came back with a vengeance or the treatments killed them. My Aunt Tranny, they took her left breast and gave her chemo and radiation, and in less than a year it was back in her right breast. They took that off, gave her more chemo and radiation. In less than a year it was in her lungs. They took off part of a lobe of a lung and then gave her more chemo and radiation. In less than a year it was metastasized into her liver, her bones, her brain. She died a horrific death. She had no quality of life for those 4 years that she was, quote, fighting the disease, and I knew I was not going down that road. So my doctor did not agree. He was very upset with me. In fact, he told me when I said to him, I'm not going to do what you're saying I have to do, he said, you don't have a choice. And you know, I was 50 years old then, 10 years ago, and actually I'm celebrating my 60th birthday on Sunday. And so, yeah.
Oh, we were singing happy birthday to you on Sunday.
I'm so glad to be here to celebrate it. And so he said to me, you don't have a choice. And I said to him, you know, Doc, I'm a 50-year-old woman, and if there is just maybe only one thing that I know in life, I do know that I've got a choice. And I want you to remember that, you know, because you've got a choice. You know, you've got a choice whether you're going to eat animals or not, and I am a big proponent of don't eat the animals. You know, you have a choice if you're going to take drugs to treat symptoms or you're going to work to have a real healing. And I'm a big proponent of let's learn how and let's heal. Let's don't just be taking drugs to try to treat a problem, because it actually can make the problem worse. Well, in 6 months I was cancer-free, and when you read my book, I hope you will. If you haven't read it already, I hope you will take the opportunity to read my first book, The Living Foods Lifestyle. You'll read that I had a whole lot of other problems that I didn't ever really address until I got on this lifestyle. There was only one motivation to get me to eat raw and living foods, and that was I wanted to heal cancer. But you'll read that I also heal rheumatoid arthritis that I was diagnosed with in my early 20s, and I healed all of my allergies and my sinus problems, and I healed depression and skin, eczema, and psoriasis, and rashes, and acid reflux, and indigestion, and heartburn, and migraine headaches. And when you listen to all that, you think that woman was a total mess. And really I was. But you know what? I was one of those people that just took a pill. And that's how I functioned. So if I had a headache, I just took a pill. Okay? And everything totally changed for me whenever I got that diagnosis. So I want to tell you, a lot of times a diagnosis of something serious that might really seem like the worst thing that could happen to you turns out to be the biggest blessing in your life. It changed the entire course and direction of my life. I opened Living Foods Institute in 1999, the same year I was diagnosed. We are now celebrating this year our 10th anniversary. People come from all over the world to learn. And we work on many components, because changing your eating is wonderful, but it isn't enough to heal. You have to change your mental thought processes. You've got to heal your emotional self. You have to learn how to properly deal with stress in a positive way. You've got to detox and cleanse. You've got to build up from deficiencies. You've got to clean out your colon, get rid of fungus, moles, yeast, parasites, worms. And when you do all of that together, you're going to then see the body does what what it was created to do. It will heal itself of anything, not just cancer, but MS and Parkinson's and lupus and AIDS and diabetes and on and on and on. There really is not anything too difficult. We're living in a day and age now that all healing is possible. I don't believe in the words terminal, hopeless, or incurable. I get those people at my center that have been told that, and they heal. So I'm glad that you're here. You know, keep your power. If you've lost it, take it back, okay? Make good decisions for yourself, because really it's self-sufficiency we've got to practice, and we've got to become responsible. We can't just keep looking to the doctor and saying, you fix me, because you know what? The doctor is not going to fix you, okay? It's up to you to learn what to do to fix you, okay? So welcome. I'm really, really glad you're here.
We're great. That's great. And if any of you out there know anybody who has breast cancer or cervical cancer, please buy one of these books and send it to them. It's an easy book to read, and it just helps people just move through. It gives you step-by-step instructions, and it can help anybody. And it's a fantastic book. Next to Brenda, I see we have Victoras. He has his book in front of him, Survival for the 21st Century. I've been a raw foodist for 12 years, and Victoras' book was one of the first books I read on raw food. And it is still a classic. It's still worthy to be read at any time, even for experienced raw foodists. So, Victor, tell us a little bit about your book and how you brought raw foods to the United States.
Well, thank you. I look around, and most of my friends are gone. New friends I made. They say you can stand on the shoulders of the great ones. Well, all those great ones that I stood on their shoulders, they're in the grave. But they were my teachers, and I was very fortunate to meet many of the great minds, among them Ann Wigmore, Dr. Walker, Dr. Howell. Howell was an interesting one. I found his manuscripts at Harvard Medical Library when I was doing research. It took me 2 years to rediscover him. He was already in the 90s at that time, working in soil research. Convinced him that his works needs to be popularized, because his book was entitled Food Enzymes in Digestion and Metabolism. And it had over 500 medical journal references. And I knew that how important enzymes were already with the little that I knew, because they were the flagship nutrients. It's the nutrient that is most sensitive, but his book showed that it also should be on the recommended daily allowances. That's how important it is. It's something you need to consume with every meal, and as well as in between meals. And the countries that are noted for the highest longevity are consumers of enzymatic nutrition, namely in the form of fermented foods, sauerkrauts, kimchi, miso, kombucha, and the list is endless. Anything that ferments with friendly bacteria, they'll protect you against avian flu. They'll protect you against swine flu. It empowers your immune system. And believe it or not, just a little add-on, you're about 95% of your genetic material is not of human origin. You're microbial in nature. Only 10% of your cells are human, 90% of them are bacteria cultures. So you better have a good diplomatic relationship with them, otherwise they'll wipe you out. And that's what's going on. Reader's Digest said in November 1999, it said, plagues, it's not an issue of if, it's only when. And when they're going to come, it's going to be pandemic, it's going to be in the billions. And they're around the corner. So start learning how to ferment. Get engaged in a plant-based diet. According to Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine.org, PCRM.org, plant-based diet is not only adequate, but anything contrary to a plant-based diet is contrary to good health. The book Survival in 21st Century, it sold over 500,000 copies, and that's basically self-published. It's a book also that is the first holistic book, and it's still as accurate, for no one has written as clearly on the subject of cancer in terms of scientific research as I have. as well as on the subject of menstruation, showing on a plant-based raw diet menstruation or bleeding on a monthly basis, it's a disease condition. It disappears in a matter of few months, sometimes taking as long as 6 months. It's also the spiritual nutrition that Dr. Gabriel Cousens talks about. I wrote the introduction to that book. You can go to right in this book, documentations not only in spirituality, the science of happiness, as well as all the issues like leukemia. Leukemia is considered incurable, yet I show right from medical journals. They've done it already before, published in British as well as Polish medical journals. So while we're doing rediscovering much that has been done in the past, Surgeon General report has stated, which was a study of a post-study after late President Johnson discovered that over 65% of Americans were sick with incurable diseases. So he had Surgeon General find out why. And the conclusions drawn at that time was get holistic. And it said right in the beginning of introductions, he said, as far as health and wellness is concerned, don't expect any help from your doctors. Don't expect any help from your hospitals or any scientific breakthrough. The whole thing resides on what Brenda was talking about, namely diet, exercise, attitude, spirituality, and emotional context, rest, which you end up needing less and less because you're just like a drunken fool when you're on cooked food, and you need a lot of sleep to recover from the hangover of that food. And also, of course, you're living in a polluted world. Get yourself a good air filter next to your bed so you'll be sleeping in the mountains of Alps or Himalayas, at least during the night. It'll help you to recover. Every night you'll be detoxifying yourself, not only physiologically but also airborne. We're all consuming dead, cooked, inorganic air. No matter how much raw food, you still eat much more air, inorganic, dead, and you need enzymatic support. I innovated indoor gardening that you do in your home. I'm talking about growing wheatgrass with salt, sea salt. I've learned the techniques from Dr. Maynard, ocean, sea energy agriculture, the pioneer with sea salt usage in agricultural. They say, in the most secret temple called alone, you knock and it shall open. You ask and it shall be given. If you do it with an heart that is true, without any doubts, and by learning to move out of doubts into trust, you will find that your body will teach you everything. And the pleasures of eating more and more live food far exceeds anything that you could imagine, because the live foods are the keys that open up your chakras and brings you to the most unbelievable experiences, emanating from the first to the second. The heart chakra automatically opens on its own so that you are at one with all life. The throat chakra spills out creative tsunamis of endless berberia, brushstrokes that are just undefined yet. It's all coming out of your system when you stop obstructing the energy flow, and then you start understanding the meaning. When you find in the Bible, it says, we are made in the goddess image, and God is all-knowing, all-present, all-powerful, almighty, and you are no less. But as long as we shut ourselves from the primal energy that is in nature, we're the only sector of life forms that has gone into negating the life form by becoming dead forms, zombied humatons that are causing conditions on planet Earth where now we're talking about 11th hour and 45 minutes till D-Day. And that's because the fire was used inappropriately. Instead of warming your buns during the Ice Age, they threw all that they could find on the ground and the dead animals and the corpses into those pots and they became potty themselves and constipated and stupidified and out of tune with nature. It's time for us to recover our life force. You can find out more about myself. Go to my website. It's www.victoras, VIKTORAS, 2012. I wonder why I used that, .com. Thank you. Okay. I love you.
Thank you, Victoras. Okay. Well, next we have Debra, and just going back to Victoras quickly. When I first started learning about Victoras, he was really talking about enzymes. That was really what excited me to learn from Victoras early on. And as we've grown as raw foodists, we've more moving now into the world of sprouting and the living enzyme component of sprouts. And Debra is our sprouting expert. So Debra, if you can talk a little bit about sprouts and how that fits into the picture.
Yeah, I would love to talk about sprouts. First, I just wanted to mention that everything I know is due to the big daddy here, Victoras. Back in 1998, I was interviewing him at New Life Expo, and he looked at me and he said, you know, I can just look at a person and be able to tell if they eat microwaved foods. And I thought to myself, I am so busted. Like everyone else on the SAD diet, the standard American diet, you know, I didn't know any better. But after meeting Victor, I started investigating, and I'm still on that journey. I'd like to say this is definitely preventive medicine. For me, I don't have a story like Brenda's, although I can say that immediately when I gave up dairy, I stopped having allergies. Hay fever went away. And, of course, you have much more energy on this raw living foods lifestyle than you do on cooked foods. But preventive medicine, there's a history of heart disease in my family. My father, my mother died at 61, my Aunt Rose at 67, and my cousin just died at 54 last year. So I did a lot of, not preaching, but I tried to get him over into our camp. And he practically had his own parking spot at all the fast food restaurants. There was no talking to him. Now, in terms of, well, when I was trying to convince him, he would say, well, how do you get your protein? Sprouts have ample amounts of protein. There's a myth that we need much more protein than we actually do. I have all the statistics on the protein issue. Sprouts, so rich in enzymes, they really are superfoods. And you can sprout in your own kitchen all year long for pennies, and it only takes a few minutes a day. I have a talk on this Sunday. Sprout Man also has a talk on sprouting tomorrow. So make sure you check this out. It's also a beautiful thing when you're able to commune with your food. And it's amazing to take this little tiny seed and you nurture it, talk to it every day, and then at the end you have a real superfood. And then also on Sunday I'm going to incorporate sprouts into a green smoothie. Smoothies are definitely the way to go, especially green smoothies, because we need our chlorophyll and they're very alkalizing. We all know that cancer, well, Brenda can tell you, cancer does not like an alkaline environment. Cancer loves sugar. It loves an acidic environment. So if we're staying on our sprouts and our green smoothies, this is the true picture of health. The smoothies, I prefer making green smoothies to juicing because you get the fiber. It's a complete food. You're not separating the juice from the fiber. A lot of times with juicing, if it's carrot and beet juice, you get an immediate spike of a sugar rush. If you're incorporating this with the greens, it enters the body a little bit more slowly. Also, it's a detoxifying agent at the very same time that you're getting all the nourishment. For example, in the small intestine, we have these little teeny-weeny hair-like things called villi. And as this energy soup is moving through, it's like a scrub brush. It's cleansing the villi in your small intestines, as well as triggering peristaltic action in the colon. Pretty much any dis-ease that you're having with constipation or even diarrhea, it was called Dr. Ann Wigmore's Energy Soup, and I do a kicked-up version of that. I actually learned it down in Puerto Rico at her institute. And their recipe for energy soup, it incorporates the sprouts and tons of fiber and the greens. And, well, you'll get the recipe on Sunday. But all I can say is it both nourishes you and detoxifies you. Great as preventive medicine. I make it just about every single day. And the other thing I just wanted to mention about the raw living food lifestyle is that it's a great way to support going green, because it's not only healthy for you, it's healthy for the farm animals, and it's healthy for the planet. We've been hearing a lot lately about global warming and the methane emissions from animal farming. Well, we don't need those animals for our protein source. We can get that with our greens and our sprouts and nuts. We also soak and sprout our nuts. It's there's a lot of information that I don't have time to talk about right now, but I don't know. I just found it fascinating when I first met Victor, and then I started investigating. There's so much to learn, and definitely this is the place to do it. Thank you.
Okay, Debra. Thank you. It's just before Chad stands up. What Debra's saying about the methane. I'm here. My name's Kevin Shuker. For those who are coming in a little bit later, I'm wearing a few hats here this weekend. First of all, I'm going to be moderating all the raw food panels. Secondly, I have an internet broadcasting company, QUEST.TV, and you see Eric, my business partner there. We're the official online broadcasters for this expo and the New Life Expo. And we'll be recording 20 workshops from this expo, so if you don't see a speaker, you'll be able to view it later. And we have 225 workshops up there from the New Life Expo, this expo, and other things that we've produced over the last 5 years. That is amazing. So 225. Last weekend, it was the Veggie Pride Parade, and we covered the Veggie Pride Parade here in New York City. There were about 800 people there, and it was fantastic. And next year, you all got to come, you veggies, come out and join us. And we had a very special guest. We had Marianne Thieme, from the Netherlands, and she's a member of Parliament from the Netherlands, and she's produced a movie. It's called Meet the Truth, and it was the movie premiere of that at the Veggie Pride Parade. And this is quite an astonishing movie. It's very similar production to the Al Gore movie, An Inconvenient Truth, and it is the part of the inconvenient truth. It's the inconvenient truth that Al Gore conveniently left out of the inconvenient truth. Because it's to do with methane, and she explains why. He's a rancher, he's a farmer. So he left it out. Now this is quite an astonishing movie. Any of you here in this audience, I recommend you go watch this movie, because there are trailers up online. You have to purchase it from Amazon.com, I believe. If you go to our site, QUEST.TV, we have a trailer and a preview, and I have the interview with Marianne Thieme. And it's really pushing that if we do not move towards a vegetarian, vegan, raw food lifestyle, this planet is not going to survive. It just cannot survive, and it's very, very powerful and right in alignment with what you're saying. My third role, I also coach fasting. I recently completed a 130-day fast. I started on January 1st, finished on May 10th. And for most of that fast, in the evening, I was living on raw blended soups, the very thing that we're describing here in this panel. So everything we're saying here is true, and it can be done. And it can be done for short times, a long time, and in fact, it can just be ongoing. So there are many different aspects. I just wanted to share that with you. Up next, I have Chad. And not only do we talk about sprouts and raw food, but there's also a new growing genre of food, and that is superfoods. And Chad represents one of the companies that are presently, through the internet, promoting the superfood category. So, Chad, if you'd like to give us a little info.
Thank you so much. Super honored, grateful to be here. And before I even talk to anybody, I want to find out who I'm talking to and just get a show of hands. How many people here are considering themselves right now to be like a raw foodie or a raw foodist? Okay, quite a few. That's amazing. Awesome. All right. And nice one. Yeah. And how many people here have heard of it, maybe thought they wanted the benefits, but thought, you know what, there's a lot to this, and it's more than I can just kind of get all the way into at this moment in time, but you're interested in the benefits, and I see a show of hands there. Okay. That's about everybody else. Now, how many people here have some sort of a spiritual practice, yoga, meditation, whatever it is? Okay. So, last question. How many people here have ever touched a hot stove? Okay? Yeah, you remember the first time. It's like programming. That's what allows us to know that we don't touch hot stoves because it burns, right? Now, what I'm suggesting is that through life, we've been weaned sometimes by programming from the nipple to soda, from the nipple to cola, from life, nature, beautiful principles of life, things that'll nurture us for thousands of years with perfect health, to something that'll kill us in 70, 80, 90 years. And we do it with innocence. That's the whole point. Baby touches a hot stove. Baby's not evil, any more than a rose bud is evil compared to the bloom. And what we want to suggest is that now that this information is becoming present and available, we have a new opportunity to not only take it into our own body, watch what happens, but then begin to share it. And because it's going to share, it's going to happen no matter what. When you put this stuff into your body, you start glowing, energy goes up. All of a sudden, your bottom line, aside from any business opportunity sharing superfoods, your bottom line with superfoods and raw live food movement, your value goes up in the world. Like literally, I've gone to places and come back 2 months later, and they say, well, I quit drinking. Well, I didn't tell them to quit drinking. I quit cigarettes. I didn't tell them to quit cigarettes. I didn't say these things were evil, bad, or wrong. All I said was put the superfoods in, put some of these raw, live green drinks in. Watch what happens. Your focus, what nurtures you, begins to shift. Easier and easier it becomes to let go of things that no longer serve us. So to me, that's what this kind of environment we find ourselves in right now is about. It's about that critical mass. We've all heard of the 100th monkey effect. They've done experiments where they've actually done crossword puzzles across the world. They'd have one group, and across the world they'd have another group. One group, they would share the answers to the crossword puzzles the night before, and they would discover that statistically, over and over again, it took dramatically decreased amounts of times for the group the next morning to solve the crossword puzzle because it was in the collective mind field. There's something that connects us all. We all know it because we're here, or we wouldn't be here, but there's a lot of people that don't realize it yet. They're connected. They're deeply connected. And as we begin to put these into practice, we're at a shift. We're at a critical mass tipping point. 3 years from now, this is going to be commonplace knowledge. People are going to have one question: where's my superfoods? How do I start doing juicing for the 21st century when the swine flus are rampant? It's not going to matter to people with an alkaline body. See, people often promote me as a business owner or somebody who started a company, but the company arose in the wake of a challenge that required realizing you can wallow in a little bit of pain, but I got to the point where I was in deep pain. Things were not working. It was enough to make me stop and say, something's got to change. And when I did change, I found that it's amazing. Most people, when they get involved because of a challenge. And that from the challenge, they want to get to baseline so they can feel normal. But once that normalcy is achieved, and we call that normal health, the thing that I found was that it doesn't stop there. It just keeps going until what we think is superhuman or superhero or, amazing capacities that we don't even hold to be as a natural part of the human experience become possible. More and more, our brain starts working differently. It's been found that when we get the rare, noble platinum group elements like platinum, gold, indium, things that were in the soil systems thousands of years ago that are now very trace, almost non-existent. When we get these kinds of things in that are more abundant in a raw live food, like when you're watering with ocean water, it's got gold in there, it's got indium, platinum, iridium, rhodium, all these rare trace elements that do a couple of things. One, it unifies the hemispheres of the brain, right hemisphere and left hemisphere. That's logical and intuitive. And we've all heard of something called the golden mean. Golden mean is a ratio. They use pyramids, galaxies, the way our body's built, plants, everything in nature seems to be modeled after what we call the golden mean. And so what we found in my own experience is that this golden mean is supplied by certain minerals like gold. And that's why the ancient alchemists called it the golden mean, because it had inherently this frequency, this vibrating pattern of its inner orbital of electron shell related to its outer electron shell by a ratio known as the golden mean. And when you put it in your body, how many people here have played with tuning forks or pianos or musical instruments? Okay, so you know, if you got two things and they're in the same key, you got key A in this octave, go up an octave, you pluck this one, it produces harmonics all the way up the scale to infinity. Same with our body. If we get the right nutrients in, get our feet in contact with the ground, get the magnetics of the earth in our body, because we're magnetic beings, and get the electricity running right, we are infinite beings. There's no edge. Cells have been shown to be immortal in laboratories, test tubes. Cells are immortal. We get 50 to 89 lifespans in cellular terms. Your cells get to replicate 50 to 80 times. Now, if you have an acidic environment, those cells have a much shorter lifespan. Therefore, you have a shorter lifespan. Now, the interesting thing is in laboratory, they discovered one thing that can unwind DNA. That's, we all know it's a spiral, and as we age, as we stress, as we grow older, it's constantly tightening. Every time it replicates, it tightens a notch. And the biological measurement of aging is how tight this DNA helix is actually winding. So people who are all stressed out, what do we say? The subconscious mind and language says, oh, they're all wound up. Literally, their DNA is winding tighter and tighter. So when we get the raw live foods in, alkalinity goes up. What happens when alkalinity goes up? Your body needs less energy to run its functioning. Therefore, you have a lot more energy left over. What happens to that energy? It goes straight into rejuvenation for a while until you're totally refurbished. Then it goes into creativity. Then our higher human potentials as a culture and as individuals in relationship with ourselves and others comes into full force. That's when we begin to live our highest potential. So Elements for Life is really a company about raising up, teaching, training, and support, and supplying a support network for people who want to be transformation activists, teaching the principles of life. And then who here likes the idea of superfoods, raw live food movement at a discount, maybe even get your superfoods for free? Anybody? Yeah. So this is a way that as we begin shining and sharing this into the world, we can actually begin achieving superfoods at a wholesale discount, even free. And even if we get to the end of the month and we realize we're not doing everything that we would want to do, maybe we're doing a 9-to-5 job and we love it, wonderful. Maybe we don't love it. Would we rather be doing something where we're creating value that was in sync and resonance with what we ourselves have experienced? If that's the case, then there's nothing more valuable than transformation. And whatever we do in our life for transformation, this is a fast track to make it all work better. We all do yoga, we all do meditation, but these things are like swimming upstream for the human physical portion of the vehicle until we get the principles of life in place. Then it becomes in sync with nature. It happens automatically, easily. We discover enlightenment is a byproduct of a cellular space in the evolution of the psyche, of the evolution of the body, that just like we have puberty at a certain age, that if we were living in total sync, that we would actually have another puberty, a losing of the teeth, losing of the hair, a molting of the physical vehicle between 120 and 130 years old. And this is the stage at which the golden years really begin. Most people never make it to the golden years. They die of disease at the halfway mark. Golden years is when you've planted your seeds, the trees have grown, and they're producing fruit that'll feed you and your family for a lifetime. So we're inviting people to take dominion of their kingdom or queendom, your own temple, your own high-performance vehicle. Take dominion. Give your body everything it needs for cellular prosperity. Get out of competition for resources within your cellular biology. That way we can be congruent when we're asking the world to stop warring with itself. We end the war. It changes our whole psyche, the way we think, the way we interact with our neighbors, our family. And we truly then become able to come from the place where we can manifest together as a culture, a world in peace, total creativity. There's enough energy for everyone. There's enough agricultural systems for everyone. There's enough of everything for the population to basically go up by a factor of 10 times. Not with the systems we have now. But Elements for Life is committed as a funding vehicle to fund these projects that are the sustainable systems of the future. So, where's our there we go. Please stand up. Thank you. On the way out, go ahead and grab one of the flyers they have, and you can go back to the booth and we'll give you some free sample superfoods and show you how you can get your superfoods for free. And we're very excited about where this is going.
We love free
All right.
superfoods.
Thank you.
Free anything. We love it. Love it. Thank you, Chad. So we're beginning to learn a little bit here about acid, alkalinity, enzymes, superfoods. And again, there is another component to the raw food lifestyle, and that is inside our body is a multitude of microbes. Now, those microbes are there for a couple of reasons. First of all, there are some microbes that are there to break down our body. They are there to help decompose the body once it's passed. And those microbes respond to an acidic environment. Okay? When the acidity hits a certain amount, they start reproducing and they start breaking down the body. We want to control those microbes by keeping the body alkaline. But there are certain microbes in the body that actually do us some good. They help us digest our food, help the processes within the body. And one of those groups of microbes are what we call fermented lactobacilli. And Karen is here running a workshop on that type of food. So Karen, give us a little insight into fermented foods and the microbe effect.
Okay. Well, actually, I'd just like to take a moment to introduce myself again, just like the panelists, and thank you for... can you hear me? I prefer not to. You can't hear me? Okay, is that better? Yeah. Can you hear me now? Okay. Let's see. Have any of you heard of Dr. Weston A. Price? Okay, you have. Okay, excellent. I'm a member of that foundation. I'd like more to talk about that maybe afterwards if you'd like to come and see me, because I know we want to get on with your questions. I'll just say that I've healed my own body, and I went back to a traditional diet based upon the principles of Dr. Weston A. Price and his investigation and what he found out in the 1930s. He would have been the equivalent to the president of the Dental Association. And essentially, he was seeing the degradation of his patients' health. He was very concerned, and he was a brilliant researcher. He even had a lab on his premises. Essentially, what his contention was is that he went looking. He closed the doors to his office. He ended his practice, took his wife, and he toured the world, which was a very huge undertaking at that time. If you think about the 1930s and our travel facilities, and our ability to travel. In essence, his contention, and maybe that's why I'm sitting at the end of the table wearing black today, because I could be the black sheep here, but essentially he left wanting to prove that the healthiest people in the world, the healthiest cultures, were strict vegetarians. What he came back finding after 12 years of research, investigating 33 cultures, is that his contention wasn't accurate. And essentially they were eating a lot of foods that supplied fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, and E, and they came from healthy animals, healthy organ meat, and essentially 50% to 60% of these cultures they all ate raw foods. Between 50 and 60% of their diet was raw foods, and many of the fats that they did take in came from raw animal products. Anyway, I'll just go back and say that my family are farmers and fishermen, dating from hundreds of years ago. Starting, I'd say about 15, 20 years ago, I went off that traditional diet, got very ill, developed arthritis, brain fog. I'm going on 63 this year. My mother's 93. The only reason I didn't bring her here today is because she had another engagement. My relatives died in their 90s. No one had cancer in my family. The only person that died of a major disease, and that's not that we're lucky necessarily, but we lived on traditional foods, healthy fats, fermented vegetables, no question. The major part of our diet turned out to be, I'd say 50% fermented vegetables as well as meats. My father was Russian, my mother Italian. My father lived on kvass. He ate buttermilk. He had a very bad heart from being part of the culture that died of diphtheria and rheumatic fever. He lost 12 of his brothers and his sisters over here, turn of the century, and his parents died of major illnesses because of infection when they came here. But the rest of his relatives lived long and hearty lives, as well as my relatives who went to sleep in their 90s. And as I say, my mother's 93 and active and out in an engagement tonight. So, different strokes for different folks. My whole belief system is about balance. We're alkaline and we're acid. We live we're
We're individuated as well as homogenized. We live in a balanced world. I believe that nature, as Dr. Weston A. Price said, life in its fullest is Mother Nature obeyed. So in any case, I'm going to turn this over to your questions, but I just wanted to say the 33 cultures that he did visit were happy, healthy, and had no educative problems, diseases. They had perfect bone structure, and his research corroborates that. And if anybody would like to talk to me about that now or after, I'm happy to share that with you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, we'll have a very interesting discussion about animal products, and we could talk about that all night. But I would say, for anybody interested in that debate, please read the book by Udo Erasmus, Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. I think it very clearly states in there the argument against for all types of fats. And again, all the research, which I firmly support, has shown that a vegetarian diet is not much better than a meat-eating diet. A vegan is slightly better, but where the big leap occurs is in the raw food. That's where the masterful leap takes place. And unfortunately, the research from the 30s did just not have this to take into account. And we have more research, and that work from those great people from those early times needs to be re-looked at with fresh eyes. And I think the information is out there, and you can all read this, and you can discern that for yourselves. I think it's a very, very important issue, the animal fat issue, and you can certainly find it. But since then, many entrepreneurs have come forward, and Doug has had a raw food store on Ludlow Street. Now, for how long? 3 years? 4 years?
Five. Well, we started 5 years ago.
5 years.
The store opened 3 years ago. We opened our second store in December.
Great. So you can see things have changed and are now growing. So perhaps Doug will give us an insight into the entrepreneurial side of raw food and how, say, somebody not only just wants to eat better, but they want to make it more of their life. What areas could they move into?
I'll back up a little bit. I had no illnesses. I was in absolutely perfect health, and I ate anything. Dead animals, chicken, ducks hanging in Chinatown, pastries in Little Italy. And then I met Denise Mari. Denise, stand up, please. Denise, back there, stand up.
Where is Denise?
So there's Denise. So I would say Denise was my real inspiration to get into this lifestyle. She was a vegetarian that wasn't wearing a potato sack. And so it was very inspirational. And she had this acronym or anagram, LOVE, and she was all about love, which stood for the live, organic, vegan experience. And it was really kind of shocking for me. And I came from a total, ghetto, street, uneducated, never went to college, wrote graffiti, went to jail, went to the Army at 17, and then kind of discovered business and entrepreneurship, which was just so much fun. Like just the idea of kind of doing things without having to be chased by the police, and the idea of being able to
depends what kind of business you're doing.
But it really kind of came in, and one of the things that, like, I heard this quote was that every man, every woman has consummate genius within them, and that some appear to have it more than others. And the awareness or unawareness of it is what made one into a master or held them down to mediocrity. And I met a lot of geniuses. I met a lot of people who were mediocre. And then it kind of made me realize that mediocrity was self-inflicted and genius was self-bestowed. And that this lifestyle was really about genius. It was tapping in to the real knowledge, the real inspiration. So it started with Denise, and then we went on a clothing optional retreat with David Wolf. And
the three of you, that's nice.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was my first time in a hot spring. It was first time walking around naked. I was really staring all around. It was really interesting for me. And then, got turned on to Gabriel Cousens and read his Spiritual Nutrition and read Conscious Eating. And then Victoras, I was introduced by another entrepreneur. Do you remember Joel? Josh Mailman introduced me to Victoras, and then he had a book out. I read the book. Totally mind-blowing stuff that someone had documented, research, science, insight, total inspiration. And then the continued to kind of seek knowledge and information, and recently got turned on to Dr. Robert Young, who wrote The pH Miracle. Has anyone read The pH Miracle out here? So unbelievable insight. Who here on the panel has done live blood cell analysis? So, you know, the whole panel has done live blood cell analysis. Who has read the book, Eat Right for Your Blood Type? So in the world of Dr. Young, there's kind of two types of blood, right? Good blood and bad blood, right? So all this blood type thing is really good blood and bad blood. So what we've kind of, like my personal kind of diet when I went raw, really insightful, I ate sweet fruit like it was going out of style. So entire watermelons, cantaloupes, pounds of nectarines, grapes. I mean, I just went from one fruit to the next fruit to the next fruit. And, you know, it was a great transition. And then I discovered fats, coconuts and avocados. Then I discovered greens. I had never ate a salad before I got into the raw thing. And so it kind of went from sweet fruit and then dehydrated, and then got turned on to juicing, and then got turned on to alkaline juicing. So now, like the main kind of spirit in kind of Denise's love quotient and love part is about how do you eat just the... Oh, there's Mark Becker. Let's give Mark an applause. You have to love Mark Becker. So just the idea of kind of living the alkaline lifestyle and what does that mean was just a whole area of kind of insight into not just eating superfood, not just eating raw food, not just eating enzymatically rich, but eating things that would kind of enrich and build high-quality blood. And the fact that you can actually look at your blood and see whether you actually have healthy red blood cells or unhealthy red blood cells, whether the white blood cells are doing their work, and whether your blood is filled with yeast, fungus, heavy metals, and toxins. These are things that someone can prick you, not on the subway, but just prick you and see, take a sample of your blood, project it 28,000 times on a microscope, look at it on the screen and see what's the quality of your blood. And actually, that was a very powerful thing. So I would say the ability to not just be healthier, but to actually feel good, to have the energy, you could then take that energy and do the things that you want to do via entrepreneurship. So I just want to say I'm so glad to be here. And entrepreneurship is really about coming up with an idea and just executing the idea and not let anybody get in your way.
Thank you, Mark. So we can also say that not only can it change your life on a physical sense, but you can actually look towards something that you could earn a living from this as well. So there's one question. We heard a little, as a raw foodist, when you move into vegetarian or vegan, you always, and you start talking to people about it, you're going to be asked two questions. The first one is, where'd you get your protein, right? That's the first question everybody asks. It's a standard question. Well, we heard earlier from Debra, there's plenty of protein in sprouts and in green foods. But the second question you're going to ask, and I'd like to put this to Victoras first, and then perhaps Brenda afterwards. The second question you get asked is, where'd you get your B12? All right? Where'd you get your B12? Where'd you get your B12? It's just, it just pounds in from everywhere. Well, we know that if B12 was coming from animal products, every person who eats an animal product would be plenty of B12, but 40% of the population are B12 deficient. So that even includes people who are eating animal products. So first I'd like to ask Victoras. Victoras, where'd you get your B12?
From my animal friends. Microbial friends that totally overrun the organism. First of all, vitamin B12 is heat sensitive, and when you're getting it out of flesh foods, a very small sector of this culture, like 0.0001, are eating their meats raw. they're eating it in a cooked form, and over 90% of the vitamin B12 is lost in the process of cooking. And the higher is your acidification and consumption of animal protein, not only is there an inverse relationship between longevity and consumption of heat-treated animal protein, the more you consume, the shorter you live, but also the acidification causes a higher turnaround of your red blood cells and a higher demand for production of B12. I had the good fortune of having pernicious anemia and anemia over 5 times. The first was due to internal flatulence associated with ongoing consumption of unsoaked seeds and nuts, many years of it, and basically I had internal bactericide that was destroying my friendly bacteria, and I developed the pernicious anemia. It's in the words of Adele Davis. She says, if you stay vegan for more than 5 years, you're going to have pernicious anemia. And sure, like clockwork, I did get pernicious anemia. Well, I quickly identified after a short prayer and meditation what this problem was, cleaned up my colon, got my good friendly bacteria acting by combining my food well, and at the same time discovered soaking of seeds, which do not create flatulence. They're pre-digested by the soaking process. And within 6 weeks, I didn't have pernicious anemia. There's been many other situations likewise induced and overcome. So it's not as nasty as they're trying to project that you're going to have medical intervention. Matter of fact, in my book, Survival in the 21st Century, I have documentations from all kind of medical journals where they treated successfully all forms of anemia, including anemia of unidentified origin and pernicious anemia, through the presentation in the diet of crude chlorophyll greens, namely fresh green foods. That's what encourages, first of all, it stops pathogenic microproliferation, and secondly, it kind of sanitizes the internal environment, and it's perfect feeding ground, as you know, in the production of sauerkrauts and kimchi, namely internally. You manufacture high volumes of friendly bacteria. Not only are friendly bacteria the source of B12, but according the previous question about as far as the issue of protein, Oolong and Huxley and many other researchers in particular have been able to study some very unusual 5 grams of protein consuming healthy vegans, and they found that actually after extensive study they found that actually it was a lie, their 5 grams of protein per day, because they were getting another 30 grams of protein from their gastrointestinal bacteria on a daily basis. So they were getting closer to the figure of the long-lived Hunzas and Georgians and Equatorians who, according to National Geographic's January 1973 issue, are living and thriving on 35 grams of protein, about 1,500 calories per day, and about 1/10 the fat that is being consumed here. They're thriving into longevity, robust, healthy. One of my friends just came back from Ecuador, where I was in 1972, and he shared that there's thousands of these 100 years plus individuals living in the mountains. And what was most interesting was a 70-year-old woman gave birth to a healthy child. No, it was not virgin birth, but it was almost like it. Healthy offspring at 70. Well, just think, in Genesis, you find in the book of Generations, they were giving birth at 300 years of age and older. And basically, they were also living in youthful bodies, the bodies of teenagers. That's what's promised for us when we return to the Garden of Eden and righteous way of living. So I would say in a posture, if you don't have a clean, if you have not detoxified, you better take vitamin B12 supplementation. But once you detoxify your stomach area so that the intrinsic factor, which is obstructed in its flow by mucoprotein saturation in the lining of the stomach, is obstructed from being available in the blood. And at the same time, if you have plenty of friendly bacteria in your system, you are going to have more than enough. And the way you have friendly bacteria is eating a plant-based diet, and it encourages much higher level of proliferation of friendly bacteria by just consuming some of the homemade fermented products, which you can create very quickly. And I'll be very glad to send my systemic approach by just writing to survival, the number 4, the letter U, at msn.com. And just ask for probiotics.
That's, so, Victoras, sorry, Brent, I'll come back to you. Karen, on the end, as we were talking a bit about probiotics there, and I know you were talking about lacto-fermented food, could you give us a little information more on that side of things, please?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Well, first of all, lactic acid, is created here. Tonight, I brought some sauerkraut with me and some beet kvass. Essentially, all that has been said is absolutely accurate. We need enzymes in our system. We have them in our body. Most of us are depleted because we're just not supplementing the enzymes that are already there. And that, yes. Oh, is that okay? Okay. So, the Greeks called fermenting alchemy because of the chemical processes, and all the healthiest peoples throughout the world have lived on some form of a probiotic fermented food, whether it be a milk product or vegetable or meat. The healthiest people did live with these bacteria in their system. So let's start with the lactobacillic acid. Essentially, it's found on almost every living thing. These bacteria are basically on us, and especially on the ground, on vegetables and fruits that we find just growing amongst us. So the way to do this essentially is to take vegetables and fruits and use a starter, an inoculant, which is either whey or salt. Now, whey comes from milk product, and essentially it's the removal of the liquid from the curd of the healthy yogurt. From centuries past, we've been doing this by lacto-fermenting milk products, and then of course we also do it with other inoculants like salt. Fruit is probably best. We can use salt. By using salt, we can also lacto-ferment vegetables and fruit, but whey is really a better inoculant when it comes to using strictly fruits. So chutney is a product. Kimchi, you're hearing about the Asian product kimchi. That's been done for years. There isn't a Japanese family that doesn't sit down to a good meal and have some form of a lacto-fermented product. It's a wonderful thing to start your meal with because it adds those enzymes to help you digest your foods and create healthy peristalsis, which again is digestion. That's basically it. I mean, there's a lot.
That's great. That's great. I mean, there's a lot of different types of fermented foods. Yeah. Rejuvelac being perhaps the most commonly known and very easy to make. Just water and rye berries, and that could be fantastic. So thank you very much.
Right.
Brenda has the Living Food Institute down in Atlanta. So you're used to dealing with a lot of people who are coming in. What is your approach, and how can people, let's say somebody never ate raw food before, is there a slow approach, or do you recommend jumping straight in, or how do you work it at the Institute?
Well, at the Institute, it is a hands-on learning center. So the whole purpose of what we do is to not only help people when they come for the 10 or 12 days, but to empower them so that when they go home, they know exactly what to do. So you actually are going to make your own sauerkraut when you're there. Right. Not watch me or read about it in a book, but you get to make it. And we actually do a wonderful fermented kraut where we're not using salt as it would. We're using cabbage. We're using some organic juniper berries. We're using some sea vegetables in there, which obviously do have the natural salts in them, and produce something that can really detoxify and cleanse. And you know, your gut, your intestines are going to make and produce B12 as long as you have that friendly bacteria in there. That is extremely important to do. So everyone is very different. If a person comes to us and they have a terminal illness, let's say a very severe, a cancer, we'll say, or they have diabetes, they have MS, they have Parkinson's, they have AIDS, whatever that they're going through, then we're going to encourage them while they're with us to go 100% raw and living foods for those 10 or 12 days, okay?
And then what kind of reaction are they going to have in that
They're going to
time?
do some detoxing, of which we've got some support for them.
Great.
Essential oils, herbs. We're doing cleansing treatments, too, because, you know, in detoxing, when you're your body starts dumping that stuff, we've found that if you're helping people by them cleaning that colon out, that can be done through enemas, through colonics, and so forth, that then those detox symptoms are very minimal. In fact, many people come in, they go, I don't feel bad at all. I'm not having any symptoms. And you'll see that they're really doing that cleansing. So they're following the program. Some people that maybe have been through chemotherapy, or they've had a lot of drugs in their body, or other pollutants, additives, preservatives, chemicals, colors, dyes from eating a poor diet, and that stuff starts coming out, you could have a symptom like headache. Okay, I was a caffeine drinker. I was a coffee drinker. So one of the first things that happened to me when I made my switch was I had the headache from hell. I mean, literally the pounding head for about a day, okay? The next day I had kind of a dull headache, but by day number 3, that was gone, and I never actually ever had a headache again. Right. When I had really experienced migraine headaches and other types of headaches most of my life, and had always taken medications for that. So everyone's unique. Just eating raw and living foods is not the ticket here either, because you've got to be helping a person based on what they need. If you've got a person with cancer and they're eating a lot of fruit, that sugar can be feeding that cancer, which in my opinion has an underlying cause of fungus, moles, candida or candidiasis. So I think it has to be customized. We also teach people when they leave to go home that working toward an 80% raw living and a 20% cooked vegan diet, we find people stay with it much longer. People might start out saying, I'm going to be 100%, but then we notice that sometimes they would start falling back, they'd start eating cooked food, and then feel guilty and think they were doing something wrong. And then they ate more cooked food because cooked food is very addictive. It set off a chain, and pretty soon those same people who at one time were eating quite a bit of raw and living foods have now gone totally back to eating cooked food. But when we began recommending that people add the 20% cooked vegan with their 80% raw and living, we found, oh, I can stay with this. So if it's cold in the winter and I want a nice hot soup, then that's okay. And there is an International Raw and Living Foods Leadership Summit Board. Victoras and I both sit on that board, along with Brian and Anna Marie Clement and Gabriel Cousins and several other people that have been instrumental in helping people heal. And we meet every 2 years, and we come up with protocols that all of us agree on, that we have found through our many years. We now have figured out that we all together have over 600 years of experience in this whole idea and lifestyle, and things that really can help people and that work time and time again. And all of us have agreed that the 80% raw and living and the 20% cooked vegan seems to be optimum for keeping people on it and really getting very good results. Okay, that's one thing. And then another thing that we all have agreed on is, like Victoras mentioned, if you're not eating in that optimum range, that it really is important to supplement with B12. However, if you are eating well and you've got that friendly bacteria, you're not really needing that, okay? So I think that's very important. But one thing that has not been mentioned that I think is really important, and that is this. We've been talking about how it heals, and we categorically know. I've had thousands of people in 10 years come to the center that nobody thought would live 2 weeks. And they are now and have been living for many, 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 many years. In fact, you'll meet 2 of these women actually coming in from LA. They're going to be at my lectures tomorrow. One, Bridget Bryant, who healed from non-Hodgkin's 4th stage lymphoma, which I think will be very exciting for you to see what happened and to hear from her idea. But there's something that nobody's mentioned, and I think it's very important. Even if you're not interested in your health and you're not willing to make a change for your health, then just do this for pure vanity, because there is nothing like it for reversing aging. My gray hair that turned gray in my mid-20s all turned back to its original color. I wore glasses since I was 12 years old. My eyesight went back to 20/20. Wrinkles went away. I look 10 years younger today than I looked 10 years ago, okay? You can see my before and after pictures, okay? So this is fantastic for reversing aging. I can run circles around energetically people that are half my age and less. I go in the gym and we're all working out. My heart rate is back much faster than people that are in their 20s that are eating meat and sugar and all these things. So, you know what? Forget the age. Like I told you, on Sunday I celebrate my 60th birthday, okay? But I'm only getting younger and younger and younger, not only the way that I look and think and feel, but my energy. So please just do it for vanity. It's worth it. It's worth it.
We agree. Well, you're quite an inspiration, so we'll go with that. Yeah, part of the challenge when moving to a raw food diet is the raw food diet itself is a cleansing diet. And a lot of things that are cleansing reactions to the ordinary public seems like there's something wrong with them. So it's very important to understand that as you go to a raw food diet, the body will dump things out of the system. Importantly, you have lots of bowel movements. If you don't have those bowel movements, it's going to come out through the skin, through the mucous membranes. The body's going to pick another passage to get those things out. So it's very important to clean out and clean out at the same time. Deborah, yes.
I just wanted to mention that in terms of the B12, mung beans and chickpea sprouts are both rich in vitamin B12, so you can get them from those sources as well.
Victoria seems to be shaking his head there. What's going on, Victoria? No?
Tell me. I just got that research on the internet.
It's probably by the Mung Bean Growers Association.
Well, anyway, it's definitely true that if you're not doing proper food combining and you have too much excess sugar and mucus in your intestinal tract, it won't be able to make the B12.
As far as mung beans, you eat lots of mung beans, sprouts, and other kind of sprouts. What will happen is friendly bacteria will proliferate, and they're the source of vitamin B12. It's not the mung beans. It's a plant-based diet that creates an environment that is useful to the bacteria, and they're the ones that make all the B12.
It really is sort of like the body is absorbing its own bacteria, of which it contains the B12. To me, it's more of a case of B12 depletion. It's usually the body's got enough B12 inside its own microbes for its own use, but we live in an environment that depletes certain people's B12 much faster than other people's. I think that's what counts for more B12 depletion. Do you have anything else on the sprouting?
I also wanted to mention in terms of the friendly flora, the lactobacillus, acidophilus, what we do in the raw living food lifestyle is we make our own seed cheese and yogurt, which is also fermented, so it doesn't have to necessarily be cabbage rejuvelac or sauerkraut or quinoa rejuvelac, but we also make our own yogurts and cheeses, so that's another great way to get your friendly flora. And B12.
And the B12, just B12. Chad, as far as superfoods are concerned, what are the qualities of a superfood? How does that with question. B12 and the enzymes and things like that?
Well, I kind of knew about B12 when I got into this because I had to kind of go overnight because I had a catastrophic injury, hypoglycemia, all that. We'll get into that tomorrow, 8 o'clock. You can see it about the story. But basically, you know, I was looking for some B12. I found that blue-green algae didn't have exactly B12, but had an analog, and it helped a lot. Okay, that was the beginning. I knew I wasn't going to do meat, and along the way, I found a lot of different things that help. In fact, last night I found the most breakthrough discovery I've ever experienced in the realm of B12, and I want to share it with everybody. I was in the great honor and synchronicity to be with an alchemist who showed me basically a material and basically described how there's over 50,000 species of microflora, bacteria, and they are the same species as in our gut that are in the relationship with the root hairs of the forest roots of these plants, and that the same thing that the plants are trying to do with these microbacteria, the villi of our stomach are trying to do. So we need that microbacteria in there just like the root hairs of the tree are doing. And if we have all of these species, dramatically crazy things are excreted by them. Yeah, I know. Weird, huh? But they're good for us. And when we get all of the species into effect, basically, it's amazing. Energy out the wazoo. And here's what it is. Okay, if you ever really need a kind of a down and literally, no pun intended, dirty way of getting all of your nutrients, all of your B12, fats, essential oils, all these things, these microbacteria produce it. And how they do it is you get near a plant that's non-poisonous, like say a spruce tree or whatever tree, and it's in deciduous forest, and you pull up the root and you see that there's a film on the root, and it's it's almost a very dark film. It's like almost like a dirt butter. But that is the fats of these microbacteria, and that's loaded with nutrients. You can actually live on this. You can't eat dirt by itself because it's just minerals. Your body can't metabolize that. But the microbacteria have the capacity of doing this. So in a survival situation, if you have nothing but roots and just stuff like that, you can actually pull that stuff off. You want to get the sediment off. The stuff I had last night was about this much black material. It was like the greatest potting soil. There's no sand, nothing like that. And it was with 2 tablespoons of honey. And I tell you what, I had a blast. I couldn't sleep. I woke up today. I felt fully satisfied. I didn't need food. I mean, almost nothing. And I'm just like amazed at what nature has for us. We're talking about a couple strains of bacteria, and we want to get the B12. There's 50,000 strains. So, we're going to be looking in the future of new ways to get the vast, broad spectrum of what nature has to offer and actually embody the principles of the cosmos. What the plants are doing, we can do inside in our belly, but we can also do it straight from the bacteria. They're doing it already. That's where we're getting a lot of this stuff anyway.
I agree. I think, we can pull it in. B12 is not really, I don't see it as a big problem anymore. Yeah. I don't think we really understood it 10 years ago. But we seem to be dealing with it much better these days.
Right. Can I say one more thing?
Sure, please do.
Basically on protein metabolism, when I discovered how you don't need that much protein, I really didn't focus on protein, but I started focusing instead on enzymes because I discovered that bodybuilders, if you give them steroids, even though they increase their protein just because they want the maximum, but even if you don't increase protein, they will still have an increase in muscle mass. And that told me, hey, something going on here. I started researching, discovering that protein or nitrogen retention is a process that goes skyrocketing when we get alkaline and the enzyme reserves of our body up. So, if you're thinking about athleticism, peak performance, and you're worried about your protein, best just get cleaned out, get alkaline, and get massive doses of live enzymes. Where do you get that? Live food and probiotics. And that'll do it.
Great. So we're sort of like moving along here. We're sort of running out of time. But there's one sort of big component to the raw food movement and very important to your health, and that is water and the fluids that we consume. I know when we were filming with Doug, you were showing us the water filtration systems. So just a quick couple of minutes. What about water filtration, Doug, and our water source? And then we'll go down the line. We can each talk a little bit about water and how we get water from foods.
I think, the body is mostly water. The brain is 70% water. All vital organs in the body are water. Bottled water in this country, for the most part, is a sham. 70% of the bottles and bottled water do not get recycled or downcycled. They end up in a landfill. 25% of bottled water is public water supply, so it's the same water that's going into the toilet is going into the bottled water that you're paying a premium for. There was a major class action suit against Nestle, which makes Poland Spring and 26 other brands of water, that they were basically using it, which forced Nestle, Coca-Cola, and Pepsi to now label the water that says PWS, Public Water Source. So what Denise really kind of inspired our research over the last 2 years, and we have a 2-part kind of conclusion to water. Number one is to use tap water and then filter it with a carbon filter to remove the sediment and particle matter, and then use a nano-ceramic filter to remove the fluoride, chemicals, and drugs that are being put into the municipal water system. And then another filter, the aluminosilica, to remove other compounds that are in the water. And then another 0.01 micron filter to remove the taste and the final bit of chlorine. So you actually leave the chlorine through the filtration system, because the chlorine, which turns into sodium chloride, actually disinfects against the bad bacteria.
So we can just plug that into our regular our regular mains water source, and we can drink clean water out of the end of
that's
it.
the first part.
Right.
That's to purify and remove the crap out of the water and the chemicals and the chlorine. And then what we've learned about alkaline water is to then run the water through an ionizer, which is basically doing electrolysis on the water, which actually is separating the acid water from the alkaline water, so you're able to actually drink high alkaline 9.5 pH or higher alkaline water.
And these are just machines that you can just plug onto the faucet at home, screw it onto the wall. I have one at home, and you just turn it on and alkaline water comes out. And it's just fantastic.
And then you can actually fill up your own glass bottles. Denise, can you hold up your clean canteen? So just a stainless steel bottle, no toxic residue, that you can fill that up. Denise carries around 2 or 3 of them at all times, and you're actually drinking your own water that you're creating. So many people today are getting Poland Spring, and they're buying tap water, and they're buying Fiji water and all these other waters that have a huge carbon footprint that are ostensibly only maybe one step better above drinking toilet water. So,
thank you for that. That leaves an image in our minds. Brenda, moving to you. What about water and food?
Well, I do agree. Alkaline water is the best way to go. I know some of us, when we're traveling and maybe we don't have access to that, and we're purchasing water, if you can find it in a glass bottle would be better, but it's so much cheaper just to have your own system and do it right at home. That's what we do at our center, and I do that at home too. Eat more foods that have a lot of water in them. So when you're eating something like a cucumber or a piece of celery, you'll notice, in fact, just take that piece of cucumber and put it in your mouth and start chewing before you try to swallow it whole. You're going to see that it really is just water that you're getting. And the same thing with your celery, right? And your other vegetables and your fruits that have very high content of water. So along with eating these raw foods that have not been cooked, they are going to have your raw or your wonderful high content of water, and then supplementing that with really good alkaline water. You want to be well hydrated. A lot of diseases could be healed if people were better hydrated. So, the water issue is extremely important. Is it appropriate for me to tell people about to come by the booth now?
Sure, you can. Sure, quickly.
I was just going to say, that please come by our booth. We're at 112, and we'd love for you to come by. And we have some things there. I have a free DVD that I would love to give you that is there as well. And just come by and visit with us. And if you have questions, I know tonight I love it when the panel we get to have questions, and maybe you've got questions, but we won't have time to do them. And I'd love for you to come by and let's just chat about that. We're right out here on the mezzanine level on, what is that, floor number 2, I guess we're on. So just come by and say hello and tell us what's going on with you. And then let's help you with something customized that is going to really work for you.
Great.
Okay?
We're saying stop here, but I just want to quickly go down the line one more time. Victoras, just tell us a little bit about what are the signs of dehydration? What are the problems with dehydration in the body and lack of water?
Thirst. It's true. Very natural, especially in the mornings or during the night, and most people end up overlooking it. So it's good to have a glass of water at your bedside. The simplest distillery is the one that is operated by nature, which is water purification, and that is the sun acting on the oceans and other river systems, water systems, and removing pure H2O into the atmosphere and then precipitating it out as rain. Well, you can duplicate that within a good quality 2-stage stainless steel distillation. That'll give you purest water, removing every kind of known chemical, including minerals, inorganic minerals, which you don't have exactly great usage. And then you re-energize this through consciousness, prayer, incantations, chanting Om around it, and as well as exposing it to sun and add some sea salt. That way you get pure water that will be converted into organic minerals internally by your microorganisms, which love sea salt. They thrive on it. So basically, that's the nicest direction. And if you want to take it to the next level, you'll take the distilled water with the sea salt into alkalizing ionization systems and get the finished product. I'm at booth 204. Come. We have some beautiful organic, freshly prepared food by some of our associated staff, as well as also I've been involved in also business entrepreneurship for over 25 years. We're the oldest, actually one of the 5 oldest network companies. We managed to stay afloat in spite of all the difficult times, and we're using algae as our basis, Aphanizomenon flos-aqua, which is the oldest historic algae that has a high purple and a high blue coloration pigmentation that has a radical impact on intellectual academic performance, and well researched with hundreds of research papers associated, as well as it's over a long history of therapeutics, as well as it has the right analog of vitamin B12, which was studied by Dr. Bob Kay of University of Chicago, University of Connecticut. So come over. I'll be there at the booth. I'll sign, autograph the survival books. We have only a few copies. I don't think it's going to go past today. You'll just have to get it on the internet. Thank you very much for taking time out to experience and get more educated into plant-based diet, because that's the only thing that will offer truly a humanitarian, compassionate way of life without having to kill our brothers and sisters of high consciousness, namely the animals. We don't have to kill anybody to stay alive.
Thank you, Victor. Yeah, just quickly, Deborah, 1 minute.
Okay. I also have an RO filter, and then to get my minerals, I will eat some sea vegetables every day. So you definitely want to be doing that. Don't be drinking bottled water. I know we only have a minute, so you can visit my website, rawfooddvds.com. That's rawfooddvds.com. There's an hour of free footage there. You can see some of Victoras right there. And I'll be camped out at the booth with him.
Chad.
Thank you. Excellent. So water, one word, wild water. In nature, it goes into the earth, spins, and it comes out the highest points, the mountains. So if you're going to have wild water, either you need to take your domesticated water, which has all the parts per million toilet paper removed and all that good stuff, and then you spin it, and it'll turn cold to 4 degrees Celsius, and it'll rise. That's called levity, and that's the kind of water our organs like. So other than that, Victoria, are you here? Okay, well, there we are. Victoria's right back there. She has some maps to our booth. You can go back and check out some free superfoods. And thank you all.
Great, thank you. And Karen, if you'd like to.
Yes, thank you all. Well, I would agree. Use spring water. And I don't have a filtration system. I actually use something called radiation hormesis. Jay Gutierrez is here, and he has a booth. And I put this radioactive stone in my water, my clear spring water, and it kills the fungus and the yeast, and it revitalizes it. That's a whole other story. That's what I'm using. Essentially, there are many cultures that just don't overdose themselves with water because they get a lot from their food, especially their vegetables and their fruits, and there are a lot of products that we can eat so that we don't have to douse ourselves with water. And we do know we're starving for water when we're feeling lightheaded and we're feeling thirsty. So you kind of got to listen to your body regarding water. I know we've been told to drink a lot of it, but some people can't handle that, and they get enough from their food. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. I want to thank everybody on the panel. You want to do Doug once came late. He's finishing late.
I love
Just
Kevin.
quick.
So I just want to say I have a few brochures on on our cleansing programs, and I have some pamphlets on the Dr. Young First New York Retreat. Our website's organicavenue.com. We open at 6 in the morning, and we have our 2 stores, and we're here to serve.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming to the panel. We'll be here again tomorrow morning at 10, again on Sunday at 11. So please come back and see us. Thank you very much. Happy Yoga Raw Expo, everyone. Thank you.